Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Motivational Intelligence Podcast. I'm Sean Johnson, and on this podcast, it's our job to deconstruct for you what makes people and organizations successful. And today's topic is a good one because it's something that a lot of people struggle with. We're talking about why people have this seemingly deep-rooted psychological reaction that causes them to judge other people and oftentimes judge themselves. And so on this episode, we're diving into the repercussions of that, both on an organizational level, on a societal level, but also in terms of what that means for our relationship with other people, our relationships with ourselves. We're going to really get a deep-rooted understanding of the psychological causes of what causes this impulse to judge other people and ourselves. And with that better understanding, how and why can we break this habit? So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all those good places. And we'd love to hear what you think, so leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. Until next time, enjoy this episode.
The Motivational Intelligence Podcast is produced by the team at Too Logical. Too Logical is an international corporate training firm and the world's leading expert in motivational intelligence, which is the ability to understand, manage, and change the motives people have. Too Logical offers over 30 different keynotes, workshops, and full training courses to small, medium, and large Fortune 500 companies in 53 countries, a lot of which you're probably familiar with: Pfizer, Bank of America, GE, Constellation Brands, P&G, and more. All solutions are completely customized, and the feedback from these sessions will blow your mind. If you have any training or speaking needs or just want to say hey, head over to toological.com.
All right, welcome back. What's up, Dave?
How you doing, Sean?
I'm hanging in there.
There you go.
Not doing too bad. I got a good topic I wanted to chat about today. That I think it'll be kind of fun conversation. I wanted to pick your brain on.
Can I let you know all that at the end, or?
Yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Sean, this is a dumb topic.
Yeah, we're rolling whether you like it or not, there, pal. I wanted to talk about judgment.
Ooh.
I think
Going deep today.
Yeah, we're going deep today.
There you go.
I'm feeling deep.
All right.
I think I think particularly now with you got the media and social media and all of that, their snap judgments are very, very commonplace.
It is the way of the world we live in right now.
It really is. So I thought it would be good to go there from a lot of different angles. So maybe we just start kind of broad. What is judgment? How should we be thinking about this?
Well, really, judgment is. It's really, it's like a personal opinion, or our conclusion on something, or really kind of a measurement against our standards, I guess you would say.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not that those standards are relevant or even
Yeah,
true, but
right,
But
yeah.
it is a measurement
That's-
against our standards.
Yeah. Okay. So is there is there like an evolutionary purpose to this? Why? I guess it seems to be that human beings are pretty wired, or predisposed, or conditioned to judge either other people or themselves. Why is that?
That's a pretty interesting question, actually. This summer I read a book. It was A River Out of Eden by Richard Dawkins, I believe it was.
Is this the one that you picked up, Ray Dalio?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so Dawkins, I believe, is a biologist, and he had talked about I think the subtitle of the book is A Darwinian View of History. I think it is. But it was interesting. He talked about in the book us as human beings and how every aspect of who we are today, it exists for a specific evolutionary purpose. And basically, at its root cause, it was for perpetuation of the species. So the
Sure.
things that survived, over the course of evolution, really survived because, in some way, shape, or form, they better prepared us to, perpetuate as a species.
Sure.
So, earlier this year, I was up in Canada, and I was working with one of our clients, and there was another consulting firm that was in there, and the gentleman came in, and he was doing a presentation on basically the human mind, or the evolution of the human mind. And one of the things I remember he talked about how there's 3 tiers of our mind, or 3 kind of generations of how our mind evolved. So the first and the most kind of core aspect of the human mind, he said, is the reptilian mind.
Yeah.
The second one is the mammalian mind, and the third is the conscious mind. And so they evolved we evolved in that in that order.
Sure.
And so if you think about what each stage of the mind was really designed to do. I remember him talking about the reptilian mind, and it's funny, he said the primary focus of the reptilian mind, he said, is because you can remember it by the 4 F's. It was about food, it was about fight, it was about flight, or it was and reproduction. Yeah. Those were the initial drivers of us as a species.
Yeah.
And so if you think about judgment as it relates to those 4, the 4 F's, judgment served a purpose in that it allowed allowed our ancestors to be able to come into a situation and very quickly define, which of these 4 areas does this relate to. They could make that, that snap judgment, look at it and say, okay, am I in danger? Do I fight my way out of this? Do I run away? Is there food available here? Or, is there an opportunity to reproduce here? So, judgment, I think it appeals to us at a very primordial level, because it really was something that, at the most root level of the human mind, it perpetuated the species.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, those 4 F's, the relevancy of those things is, a little different than it was, at that point in time. Food's a lot more readily available.
Sure.
The fight or flight, we're not, in those kind of dynamics, all that often.
Right.
The 4th F is probably still relevant,
Yeah.
but
A
little bit. But still, because that judgment instinct is so deeply embedded in the most core fundamental aspect of our brain, I think that's why it still exists.
Yeah, sure. So, so you kind of you touched on it, but where does it show up today? Because a lot of like you said, a lot of those things aren't nearly as prevalent or urgent as they were before. We have an abundant amount, for most of the world, it's an abundant amount of food, and you're not, we have pretty good shelter, and
right.
We're not constantly in that kind of danger. So, right. Where does it show up? Where does that judgment show up today without those things being as prevalent?
Yeah. I think that unfortunately, it shows up in a lot of different areas. I mean, obviously, it shows up in us as individuals, as we look at others and as others look at us. But I think probably the biggest way, particularly in the last 20 years, I think judgment has really been an incredibly effective tool to manipulate people. To manipulate people so that you could market things through them, to manipulate people, so that you could capture their attention, to manipulate people in a way that you could drive up your ratings, so the judgment has been, it's really a wonderful tool to emotionally charge somebody and to polarize them. And
Sure.
and the more you can polarize, then the more emotion you engage, and the more emotion you engage, then you can begin to attach things to that emotion, to whether
Sure.
it's selling something, whether it's driving ratings, or whether it's getting someone to vote for it.
Why do you think, you said the last 20 years, why do you think, what happened 20 years ago? Is it the internet? Is it, what's happened in the last 20 years?
Well, I think certainly I think that even predating the internet, I think that there's a lot more outlets today than there used to be. So
A lot more competition for attention.
exactly. So you had to become more sophisticated in capturing it because there's a lot more distraction. So
Sure.
Whether it started with the explosion in cable TV and the multitude of channels, and how do we drive people to our channels?
Right. Yeah. News used to be, we're competing against 3 other channels versus
Right.
now you're competing with 3,000 other channels.
Right, and you're competing 24 hours a day instead of an hour in the evening.
Right.
So not only do you have you have a lot more outlets, but you have a lot more time.
Yeah.
And so I think that I definitely think that's driven it. Certainly, internet hasn't helped, because now you've got even more outlets and more things. There was
Everybody basically got their own channel.
exactly, well, and that Tristan Harris and his interview recently was talking about the attention economy and and how we have basically monetized people's attention.
Yeah.
So so I think you're absolutely right. So I think that the inspiring that instinctual judgment, it just helps to capture people's attention.
Yeah. It makes people money.
Exactly.
Yeah. So maybe it would help for us to, obviously, it's kind of an economics issue when you kind of look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Why it's kind of perpetuated as much as it has and as explosively as it has. What I think it might be helpful for us to kind of understand it on more of a fundamental level.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, why do we judge? Let's start with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty common that people judge themselves. They're hard on themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or so why do they do that? Why do we do that?
I think at the most fundamental level, it is an outgrowth of a feeling of inadequacy or incompleteness. In some ways, we've talked about this in other conversations. We look for things that align with our dominant thoughts and beliefs, positive or negative.
Sure.
Certainly, there's a wealth of research out there that talks about the self-esteem-based issues that that exist in society, the fixed mindsets, those things that hold people back. And so, if you're looking and you see a progressively larger percentage of the population that is externally validated and feels in some way, shape, or form a sense of I'm not good enough, or I'm not keeping up, or other people's lives are better than my lives, or, something is incomplete in me.
Mm-hmm.
And judging ourselves, it actually validates that our feelings of inadequacy, as crazy as it sounds. So it's almost like a self-perpetuating negative spiral in that sense.
Yeah, and it's that cognitive consistency.
Exactly.
That if you think of yourself as unworthy or or inadequate. Your brain's just looking for reasons to reinforce that.
Exactly.
So what does that mean? I can't imagine that's good.
No, no, absolutely not.
What are the repercussions of that?
Well, I think what it does is it serves to make us feel, I think at a root fundamental level, it undermines our own sense of value, in that sense. I think that it also, it tends to heighten ourselves from an emotional standpoint. It raises our stress levels about things. In a lot of ways, it mishapes our expectations of who we are, of what we're capable of how the world should work around us, how other people should treat us. It creates a kind of a rose-colored perspective on the world.
Yeah.
Although not a wholly accurate one.
Right. Yeah, and I would think it would, kind of perpetuate kind of this self-sabotage engine where if you have these deep-rooted feelings of inadequacy, probably even mostly unconsciously, your brain is just looking for reasons well, you don't deserve this, so.
Right. And the reality, I was
let's screw it up for you.
I was having, Catherine, my daughter, was home for the weekend from college. Yeah. So she and I went out to breakfast yesterday, and we're sitting there, we're talking. We were actually talking about somebody that we know in common. I'll keep it kind of ambiguous so it's not obvious who. Yeah. And how this person had had grown up in a family dynamic where there was a more favored child, and they weren't the more favored child.
Okay, yeah.
And so this person kind of grew up in the shadow of a sibling where there was I've never really been able to measure up type of a thing.
Yeah.
And and so she and I know, she's a psychology undergraduate major. So she's had a wealth of classes and things. So it creates some kind of interesting conversations.
Yeah, sure.
And so we were sitting there and we were talking about the kind of the scars that we all grew up with. Very few people I've ever met have had a perfect upbringing where they had perfect parents and and all of those kinds of things. And every child, for whatever the issues were that were in their home, they think it's a direct reflection of them. For some reason, it was there was something they did or something they weren't, or something that like this person we were talking about at breakfast. And when in reality the way their parents treated them largely had to do with their parents' own dysfunction, and in no way it was a reflection of them.
Sure. But that's not how you categorize it or catalog it in your mind.
In your own mind.
Yeah.
So that's why so many people, because they don't frame things the right way in their in their own thought process, they think that the way they were treated was more of a reflection of them, when in reality it was just a reflection of their parents' dysfunction.
Yeah, sure.
So many people grow up with that that kind of that sense of inadequacy, or there's some missing piece there.
Yeah.
That that exists for them, and whether it's being able to frame those things constructively, and to be perfectly candid, I had some of that same dynamic in my upbringing. And it took me, years to get past the framing that I had created in my own mind around things.
Yeah, sure.
And
it's so deep rooted.
Absolutely, and it's you're in that the formative stages as a young as a child, and you're trying to put pieces together that psychologically you're not equipped to be able to put together just yet.
Right.
And I think a lot of people they never put them together. I was fortunate to have people help me to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, I remember battling for years and creating difficult dynamics and relationships and things like that. And I literally, after I was in my 30s, right? So I mean, and I remember to this day, I remember the moment when it was it was kind of like a light switch flipped in my brain, and suddenly I was, because of the help from others, I was able to reconcile things in my own mind and realize that, those influences when I was growing up, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
It was the ripple of dynamics that my parents dealt with, and in that the incredible catharsis that came from that was being able to find forgiveness.
Yeah.
So that the anger and the resentment and all of those negative emotions that you carry for all those years,
onto it.
right? Now all of a sudden it's like, wow, I don't need to carry that baggage.
Yeah.
And so.
Which is, I think, what you don't realize how heavy it is until you put it down.
Not at all. Not at all. Because it ripples in. It really ripples in so many aspects of your life, and the crazy thing was for me, it rippled. It rippled in my relationship with my children. It rippled in my relationship with my wife. I mean, so you really do. You see the cascading effect of all of that, and so when you're finally able to reframe that, and get a more constructive perspective, you're able to change the way you look at yourself. You're able to change the way you look at that other person. You're able to forgive. You're able to forgive yourself in a different way. You're able to forgive them in a different way. And so you're right. For me it was literally like, it's hard even to put into words the significance of the shift in my mind.
Yeah, sure. And, I think you said another thing, which I think is totally true. I know it has been for me that, a lot of those things are so deep-rooted that you need another perspective to get, because you're so in your own head.
Oh, yeah.
That, and when the things are that deep-rooted, even having been developed and coached and mentored to know what those things are, you still need an outside perspective to really help you get through that. And that's, I know that's true for me, and you said, for you too. How did people help you through that?
It's a great question, and I wish I could give you an A, B, and C answer.
Yeah.
And I think part of the challenge with being able to give a definitive answer on that is that you said something a moment ago. I mean, our assumptions are, those beliefs that we hold. They're our primary and only referencing point.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so hard for us to be able to see beyond that, because our mind doesn't want to see beyond that.
Right.
Because it doesn't, that is the referencing point of everything for you.
Yeah, it's the sense of stability.
Exactly. And so I think the way it happened was through through a series of conversations where people helped me to challenge those assumptions. And while there was a moment for me where it was like the watershed moment where the water came over the dam, but I think it was a series of conversations that got me to that point. You know, it wasn't one conversation. It was a series of challenging those assumptions to all of a sudden that dam broke, and then it was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was literally, it was like moving from black to moving to white. It was that big of a shift.
Yeah.
But I don't think it all came in one singular, because of one singular conversation.
Yeah, it was kind of chipped away at those walls over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right, so that's judging ourselves. How about judging others? Why, is it along similar lines? Why do we judge others?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, at a fundamental level, I think we judge people for a couple of reasons. We judge others because it gives us, it helps us to feel better about ourselves.
Yeah, gives us a sense of superiority.
Right. So the, we do that in, you see it in the media. The media loves to build people up and then knock them back down.
Yeah.
So I think to a large degree the reason that we judge others is that it makes us feel better about ourselves, or it makes us feel less inferior.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess it kind of does come from a similar place. That feeling of inadequacy. If you see somebody else doing great things, doesn't make you feel too good about yourself, I guess.
Right. And it's somehow they're able to accomplish something that for whatever reason we perceive we can't accomplish. So there must be some reason they are, because they're doing something illicit, they're doing something criminal, they cheated in some way, or they had an edge, they were somebody's favorite, they were, so we look for the rationales why others can and we can't.
Yeah.
Because then we can sit back and go, well, if I had that advantage, then I could have too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like so much of this boils down to, when we are judging other people, so much of it boils down to a confidence problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that seems to be the root of
judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of it. So why do we? I guess it. That's. I mean, and that kind of goes along to why we fear others, because I think that's another thing that particularly now, but I think has always been true, is we have this deep-rooted fear in being judged.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are we judging ourselves, we're judging other people, but we don't want people to judge us.
Exactly.
Is it? I got to imagine it's that same sense of lack of self-worth.
Absolutely. There's and we might have talked about this in one of our other conversations, but I remember years ago reading about that study that they had done in Reader's Digest, where they asked people what their number one fear was, and people came back and they said public speaking was number one and dying was number two, so you ask yourself, so how in the world does public speaking beat out dying?
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
how can it be better to die than it is to stand in front of a group and do a speech? But you ask yourself, well, what happens when somebody's up there in front of a group? Well, now all of a sudden, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people potentially judging you.
Yeah.
And oh, they screwed up that sentence, or oh, look, they're nervous, or oh, look, they're sweating, or oh, look,
Yeah.
And so I think that tells us a lot about how strong that that fear of judgment is in us.
Yeah.
There's in the book Solve for Happy that you and I, were talking about.
Yeah. Great book.
Oh my God, isn't that?
It's one of my favorites that I've read in a long time.
Michelle's reading it right now.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, I gave it. I had given it to her.
Yeah, I gave it to my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. And it's funny because. Michelle's one of these people where she'll take a year to read a book, right? She'll read 2 sentences or 2 pages, and she'll get on to something else. And so this book she picked up about a week ago, and I'm like literally watching her every day she's reading, which is really unusual.
Yeah.
But I love what he talks about judgment in the book, and I loved how he framed it up. He said because. He talks about how most people are so wrapped up in judging themselves that they really don't have the mental energy to be judging us. They're caught up in their own psychoses. Not so much. But yet, nonetheless, so many people are so concerned about about that side of things. And it was interesting. I know from a public speaking perspective. I remember years ago a mentor telling me that. When you really dial it in from in terms of being able to connect with groups, is when you can totally let go of that sense of yourself, that sense of being judged or being evaluated, and just be free and be yourself in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
And it's liberating when you get to that point where you just absolutely let go of that sense of self, and it doesn't matter what they think of me. What matters is that the message connects.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a I think so much of it is we seem to be seeking this sense of validation from everybody else. And I think that maybe that's a big part of this fear of being judged is you're looking to all these other people for validation.
Right.
And that's your problem right there.
Right. Why do we feel this compulsive need to look outside of ourselves for that?
Yeah.
Why is it that we can't look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I'm enough. I'm good enough. I'm not that we're perfect or that we can't be better, but why can't we be happy with who we are today and what we've become today and what we're, more importantly, even what we're working on becoming tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's that's a different type of I think it's a different type of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think that the traditional people think traditionally of confidence as almost like a cocky, to an extent, like at the extreme, where it's, I think that I'm better than everybody else. When I think, what it really is it doesn't really matter what everybody else thinks.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because I totally agree. I mean, if you look at what people juxtapose, with confidence, whether it's, arrogance or conceit or egotistical or the know-it-all attitudes that people have, those are all the manifestations or the force field that people who struggle from an esteem standpoint use. It's kind of they hide behind those things. Yeah. And conversely, when you truly meet people who are secure in themselves, you're right. They don't look for that external validation. They tend to be very humble people. Yeah. Because they feel internally okay about who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this incredible sense of peace. Yeah. About them. Yep. Like they're just totally cool. Totally fine with whatever you're thinking about me. Is irrelevant.
Right.
That's all. That's your business, not mine.
I remember when my daughter Catherine, she was, she was probably maybe 7 or 8 years old, and it's funny. She actually just reminded me of this story. she was getting picked on the bus, and by these other girls, and so she coming home from school and she's crying and she's all upset, and these girls were making fun of her and all of those kinds of things, and and as a dad, you hate seeing your kid get bullied, and and I remember she and I sitting talking one night, and I said to her, I said, honey, I said tomorrow, I said if those girls pick on you, and I said they probably will, I said I want you to look at them, and I want you to say this. I just want you to look very nicely and just say, I'm sorry. Did I allow you to think that your opinion matters? Because it really doesn't. And I said to her, I said, honey, I said, the only opinions that matter, I said, are yours and the people who really truly love you.
Yeah.
I said, nobody else's opinion makes any difference. And so I said to her, I said, do those girls really truly love you? And she's like, well, no, Daddy. I go, then their opinion doesn't matter. And then I reminded her of that, that story when I walked her down to the bus the next day. And and at the end of the day, she came home, and she was kind of laughing. She goes, she was, Daddy. She goes, I said what I told the girls what you said, and I said, and what did they do? And she goes, they left me alone. I said, there you go.
Yeah.
And so now she's in college, and she actually, when she left for school, this year she wrote letters to Michelle and myself, and left them on our pillows.
Wow.
Yeah, and she, so she was kind of going back and thanking us for these like little moments from her childhood. And that was one of the things she said in her letter to me. She said,
wow.
She goes, thank you for teaching me whose opinion matters.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That was it. That was, it was one of those moments where I, as a dad, I kind of lean back and go, she was paying attention.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no. You're never quite sure about those things,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was
Yeah,
cool.
that
was
one
very
landed.
Cool. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. All right, I want to, I guess, like one other thing I wanted to touch on that we kind of mentioned in the beginning was social media.
Mm-hmm.
What role? I wanted to talk about what role social media and kind of this environment that we're in plays in judgment.
Do you think social media's made it better or worse?
Oh, worse. Oh, God. So much worse.
Yeah. It's
from both perspectives, because I think it's made judging yourself worse, because now you're seeing more of the, like we talked about before, like the red carpet moments of everybody else's life, and you're judging yourself against those. And then it's also giving gives people the platform to kind of judge other people without the repercussions that they would have to. You don't have to say it to their face anymore.
right. Yeah. So you can hide.
You can hide.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to. You can do it anonymously, or even if you're doing it in your own name, you're doing it, from your bedroom or something. You're not looking this person in the eye and saying it.
Yeah.
To
There's
them,
no accountability.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing that's going to happen.
Yeah. It's it's interesting, and I wholeheartedly agree. And your generation has much more grown up in with social media than certainly mine did. So I kind of look at myself on the periphery of it, and haven't been, for whatever reason, fully kind of fully immersed. But I find it curious how that compulsive seeking of validation.
Yeah.
that social media has created, you
Yeah.
know, and how people, the you know, that feeling of, oh, I've got this beautiful plate of food in front of me, and I got to take a picture of it and post it, and you know, and let's see how many likes I get, and
Yeah.
you know, so again, we've taken the concept of external validation, and we've just, you know, we've exploded it now.
Yeah.
You know, across the, you know, a network of people, and so I think you're absolutely right. I think it sets a standard. I think it sets a false standard in people's minds of what other people's lives look like, and by comparison, how inadequate our life is.
Yeah.
And it also creates a means of seeking validation, you know, to, you know, make us feel, you know, better about the status of our lives.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think it takes such a deep-rooted psychological desire, and you know, it's kind of created this battle and this war between what's good and healthy for us, and you know, for people in general, and all of the data scientists and psychologists and engineers that are working for, you know, the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Googles and of the world, and it's just, you know, we are hopelessly outgunned.
Oh, and they are marketing to the most primordial aspect of who we are.
Yeah.
Right. And while I choose to believe, maybe wrongfully, but you know, and maybe it's just my own naivete, but I mean, I choose to believe that the intent is not an evil intent. You know, and that these organizations, they want to do well for the world, they want to do well for society. There's also a profit motive.
Sure.
That you know, is pulling them to, you know, let's keep triggering this in in people,
Right.
because it allows us to capture their attention. If we
Right.
can capture their attention, then we can market things to them.
Yeah. The more eyeballs we capture, the more
Right.
ads we sell. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like I don't know that it is an evil thing, but it's just, you know, I think it is as simple as look at their incentives.
Yeah.
You know, like that's, you know, look at their business model.
Right.
And if that's your business model, you know.
And how do you change that?
Right.
And I don't know that you can.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
So while you might have the best of intentions, you're inherently pulled by, you know, because this is how compensation programs, this is how stock drives, this is
Right.
how, you know, so I think you're 100% right.
Yeah. Well, and you, like, there's, you know, there is some hope where you're starting to see, you know, I think for a lot of these companies, it's also a short-term versus a long-term lens. You know, when in the short term, the more eyeballs and all that kind of stuff, obviously the more profit and the higher the stock price and bigger the bonus and all that kind of stuff. But over the long term, you know, if you're really damaging people to that extent, it can't be good for your business.
I think we don't really know.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's an inherent lag in, in when something is kind of injected into society, and then us really being able to quantify what was the impact of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, likely it'll be another 10, 20 years before we really have clarity of, hey, what did this really do?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we've been talking about judgment, forming judgments. I guess it's probably relevant to ask, are we any good at this? Like, or how often are we actually right? Or is there even such thing as being right.
Right. Yeah. No, we suck at it.
Yeah.
You know?
I thought so. I
Yeah.
don't think.
I mean, because the motives for it are fundamentally wrong, and and so that just by virtue of the fact that the core motive behind it isn't right, it's going to skew the perception on that. It puts an inherent bias, on things.
What do you mean by, like, talk about that? What's that core motive? Talk about that.
The core motive comes back to a fundamental, sense of inadequacy or insecurity of an individual. So, the driving factor behind it is fundamentally flawed.
Right.
And therefore, anything that
comes
off it is going to be, is going to be flawed because of that.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, so you stop and and the other thing too, think about. Here's an interesting question. So, how often are your judgments positive versus negative?
Yeah, it's got to be very heavily negative.
Right. And so if that judgment is a negative one.
Yeah, and I'm a relatively positive person, but even
right.
like, that's just
so you're judging somebody else's intent. You're judging why did they do this, or why didn't they respond to this email, or why didn't they those kinds of things, and or even something as simple as why did that guy just cut me off and on the road, those kinds of things, and we tend to make that that snap judgment and assume an ill intent, or assume that that there was something less than optimal in that situation, when more than likely that's wholly incorrect.
Yeah.
What I've found is that most people, as it relates, there inherently are evil people in the world, and
some people just suck.
Right. Yeah, they just have ill intent, but for the most part,
I think people are generally good.
Yeah, exactly. They do things. They do things for their own motives. Sometimes their motives ill affect others, but they don't oftentimes do it with the intent of ill affecting others.
Right.
And so and that's it's a great test is. To catch ourselves in those moments of judgment, and really step back and ask ourselves, okay, well, if we're making this assumption, can we prove it?
Yeah.
What if it's the opposite?
Yeah.
And how does taking that opposite perspective, how does that change the psychology? How does it change the physiology? How does it change the emotions that we're wrapping around that?
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's one thing that when you do stop and think about it, because I think you have to kind of catch your snap reaction and consciously override it. But that is one thing that I think that I've more come to realize is the more I've gotten older is you realize more and more how much is everybody's fighting their own battles.
With
There's everybody's dealing with something.
Right.
Everybody's got something going on. They're dealing with something themselves. They're dealing with something with their family, or dealing with something at work, or whatever it is. And most of the time, and I think this is a big realization, is most of the time, like cutting. You get caught off in traffic, or what somebody bumps into you on the sidewalk, or whatever it is. 99.999% of the time, it's not about you.
Right.
It's about something else.
Yeah.
But it's we tend to make in our mind that how dare they? That's you attach this meaning to what they did to you when. You're the last thing on their mind right now. You're not that important. Yeah.
You're the center of your universe,
exactly.
Not the center of theirs.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But I think that does. I think you're totally right. It's a completely different psychology and physiology, and you're just much less angry when when you recognize that. I think you understand people so much better too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's the, so, to that point, you think about empathy and, how empathy plays into judgment.
Yeah.
Because empathy to a large extent is it's the antidote to judgment. It's, the antithesis of judging is being able to, look at people with empathy or to look and say, is there, could there be another reason why they're doing that? What might that be? What could be going through their head that's causing them to behave the way that they're behaving?
Yeah.
And when you can project yourself into somebody else's thought process in that regard, it really begins to change your perspective of who they are, and candidly of really how you can have a more positive interaction or make a more positive difference in their life.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of struck me as you were saying that judgment and understanding are kind of mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. I think when we're judging somebody else or we're judging ourselves, in order to judge people, we can't we don't have a level of understanding.
Exactly, because you go back to the beginning of our conversation, and a judgment is a measure by our standard.
So it's inherently just selfish.
Exactly. So how in the world can you judge, but then look at something from somebody else's standard?
You can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's your mutual exclusivity.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a helpful anecdote to think about, which is if we are judging somebody, we can't possibly even be trying to understand them. Mm-hmm. And if you understand somebody, you can't judge them.
Right. And therein lies, if you look at our, the political situation that we're in right now and the polarization that exists there.
Yeah, sure.
And, and that's exactly what we're facing in our society is that nobody is trying to take the time to understand why other people are coming from the perspectives that they're coming from, and they're so convinced that their perspective is right, mm-hmm. that it keeps us from being able to find a middle ground where everybody is happy with the outcome.
Right. Yeah, nobody's trying to understand.
No, they're so caught up in that my perspective is right and therefore yours must be wrong.
Right.
And and therefore there is no middle ground.
Yeah, and my intent is good, therefore yours must be bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh boy, maybe we should run you for president, Dave.
No. That's got to be the it's a way underpaying job for the for the level of stress that you have to take
absolutely.
on.
Yeah. You're not doing that one for the money.
No. Here, it's funny because I've often thought. In fact, I was having this conversation with somebody not too long ago. Why would anybody want to be the president?
Yeah.
And I remember we were sitting and talking, and we came to the conclusion that there's only two reasons why somebody would want to be the president. They're either an off-the-chart narcissist,
yep,
or they are an off-the-chart altruist, and they want to make a difference in terms of society.
Yeah.
And you really can't tell
which is
which until they get out of office, and then watch what they do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If they continue to do good works and they continue to try to better society, then you know who they are. If they go on a speaking circuit and are getting $150,000 for speeches and all those kind of things, there's probably a little bit more of the narcissist mode.
Yeah,
movement.
sure. Yeah. No, I think that's because you got to be insane to want to take that job.
I don't understand it at all.
Yeah. All right, so we have this reactionary tendency to, snap, judge. How do we break out of that? How do we break that habit? Because it's not good.
Oh yeah, no. I used to be. I think I used to be a fairly judgmental person. by my own judgment, I'm not very judgmental anymore.
I'm going to try to unpack that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Work on that one for a while.
I'll work on that one for
There you go.
Yeah.
But I think part of how you break that cycle, is first by changing your own perspective and really asking yourself, what right do you have?
Yeah.
To judge anybody else? I mean, what right? You don't want other people to judge you,
Right.
So who gave you the right?
Yeah.
To judge others.
Yeah. Who put you on the pedestal?
Exactly. And so the reality is, none of us, we don't have that right. And the, and even stepping back and asking ourselves or looking at the way that we're judging ourselves, or what's the standard by which we are judging ourselves?
Yeah.
Are we judging ourselves based upon some external standard that, has been marketed and sold to us? Is that the litmus test of whether we're good enough or worthy enough or, or human enough?
Yeah.
Or is there something more true and more fundamental that that we really do? We need to change our own standard.
Yeah.
And I don't, I can't provide some universal litmus test here, but what I found, at least for me, is the rather than judging ourselves based upon our mistakes, or based upon the perceived shortcomings that we have right now, or whatever those other negative things may be, I think we've got to we really should be looking at ourselves and judging ourselves in terms of, did I learn something today?
Yeah.
Did I in some way, shape, or form become a better human being today?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's important. How did I handle the setbacks that I was thrown today? Did I handle those in a positive, constructive manner where I carried something from them that's going to make me stronger tomorrow? Or did I fall to victim, oh, woe is me thinking, or allow negative emotions to, take over? Was I selfish and self-centered today and me focused, or can I look at the day and say, you know what? In some way, shape, or form, I made the world a better place. And it's not not some big Pollyanna, I cured cancer, or those kinds of things. But did I say hello to people?
Yeah.
Did I smile? Did I open the door for someone? Did I let somebody in traffic? There was I remember years ago listening to a Ken Blanchard tape, and in the tape he talked about, did you bring more love or hate into the world?
I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if so what are the standards by which we're judging ourselves? Were we were we grateful for where we are in life? In the things that we have. Did we learn something today? Did we positively handle our struggles? Did we bring love into the world? And I mean, I think if, and I'm not saying that those are the only things, but at least those are top of mind.
Yeah.
I think if we judge ourselves based upon those things, and we can look at those four things even and say, you know what, I did okay.
Yeah.
Then, you know what? Then we're probably focusing on the right things.
Yeah. Well, I think I think we have this tendency to overthink everything, and a lot of times I think with a lot of this kind of stuff, the answers are a lot simpler than we're leading ourselves to believe, and they're simple but not easy.
Yeah.
But I think that's a huge thing. And the other thing I think too
What
is
do you think that is?
what simple
is it?
but not easy.
No.
Or why do we overthink?
Yeah, why is it that we feel that, why do we have to complicate things? Why?
I don't know.
Why is it that we can't look for the simple answer? Instead, we have to try to, and maybe it actually ties back to what we talked about before, that feeling of inadequacy. If it's complicated, then
there's an excuse for me to have not figured it out or done it.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that could definitely be it. Because I think there is this, we just make things so much more complicated than they need to be.
Yeah. And thus, we perpetuate our own unhappiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe we just cracked it, Dave.
Yeah, I don't know. Every now and then.
Yeah. I think, something too is, I know for me, like, just thinking about, like, where are you looking for validation?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I know that's, for me, is if you're looking, and I think it's as simple as, are you looking outside or are you looking inside?
Yeah. And
if you're looking outside, all of these other things pop up, and it gets a hell of a lot more complicated. But if you're looking inside, everything becomes a lot simpler. It's harder, and it can be harder to grapple with some of those things, but it becomes a lot simpler, I think.
Yeah. The only opinions that matter are yours and the people who truly love you.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, you got any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Any loose ends to tie up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to. I think that if we can catch ourselves when we're falling into that judgment trap, the habit, and change it. So just notice when we're sliding down that slippery slope, and then really challenge those judgments. Do we 100% know that judgment is true? Can we say with 100% certainty?
Yeah.
And what if it's the complete opposite of the way that we're looking at it?
Yeah.
How does that make us feel? And how does that change our expectation? How does that change the way that we're moving in the world or interacting in the world? And I think if we do that, in the end, I think we end up building better relationships. I think we end up connecting more with people around us. And I think we end up ultimately feeling a lot more fulfilled in who we are. And maybe we really start pursuing what success really is instead of what we're told it is.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I think I think the one final thought. Somebody said this to me recently, but I think in terms of dealing with our own demons, I think it's true that you need that outside perspective, and I guess I think one thing is it's a point that I'd like to make is it's okay to ask for help. I think so many people look at it as a weakness, and I know I have, for sure.
Is it the Emerson quote where the vast majority of men live lives of quiet desperation?
Yeah.
And it's so true. I think that nobody has all the answers.
Yeah.
And we can't. We are psychologically incapable of challenging our own assumptions because we can't see beyond them.
Yeah.
And that's where having that second perspective, having the that other person with a differing awareness to to help. It's made it's made huge difference in my life. So I absolutely agree. And it's the and there's no shame in being vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think we're social animals for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we are psychologically incapable of seeing inside our own minds, there's a reason we're social animals and not living alone in the forest.
It perpetuated survival of the species.
Yeah, exactly.
We were better hunters when we did it together when we did it alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, Dave. Well, this was a good one.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hey guys, one more thing before you take off. This is Motivational Intelligence Insider. It's just a very short, exclusive email every Monday that comes from Dave, John, and the guests on this show. This is the only place they share their very, very best stuff, and it's delivered right to your inbox every single Monday. This could include exclusive tips for upping your game, articles they're reading, videos they're watching, stories from the road, and on and on. It's the best way to kick off your week, and this content comes directly from Dave, John, and the guests, and is only available to subscribers of Motivational Intelligence Insider. So if you want these guys and gals to email you their best stuff, go to 2logical.com/insider. That's the number 2logical.com/insider, and drop in your email. And if you do, I hope you enjoy.
The Motivational Intelligence Podcast is produced by the team at 2Logical. 2Logical is an international corporate training firm and the world's leading expert in motivational intelligence, which is the ability to understand, manage, and change the motives people have. 2Logical offers over 30 different keynotes, workshops, and full training courses to small, medium, and large Fortune 500 companies in 53 countries, a lot of which you're probably familiar with: Pfizer, Bank of America, GE, Constellation Brands, P&G, and more. All solutions are completely customized, and the feedback from these sessions will blow your mind. If you have any training or speaking needs or just want to say hey, head over to 2logical.com.